So when it comes to the Acolyte, okay, there's a lot of things about the show that I actually really like a lot. And again, at times when I watch it, I'm wondering if I'm being too critical. But every 5 minutes or more, depending on the episode, certain events will occur that will just bother me. And it's something I kept saying every previous stream when I was talking about the Acolyte. I kept bringing up that stupid moment in The Rise of Skywalker, and I kept comparing this show to the sequels and saying, like, it's not, the writing isn't as bad as this or that, and I was like struggling to explain kind of what I was trying to get at, but I think I figured out a good way to explain it. Because basically, I have three main issues with the show. First issue is I feel like the characters behave out of character at times to progress the plot to a certain point where they basically want certain things to happen, so they will have characters behave out of character in order to get us to that plot point that they want to happen. So instead of the characters driving the plot forward, the plot is driving itself forward. And that's what I kept hitting on in previous streams. I would say the writing isn't as bad as the sequels because it's not like they fly now and blah, blah, blah. What I was trying to explain was that in the sequels, moment to moment, there is plot point after plot point after plot point that fundamentally makes no fucking sense, and it impairs my ability to even take the movie seriously at all. Because just shit will happen that makes no sense. On its face, it is just obvious that it makes no sense. Whether it's the introduction of Starkiller Base that can destroy endless planets from, across, the whole thing made no sense. Leia flying through space, characters being shocked by jetpacks, even though jetpacks have existed for thousands of years. There's just shit that fucking Palpatine, should not even be in The Rise of Skywalker at all. Snoke makes no sense. Where the fuck did he come from? Oh, Palpatine made him. How? How did Palpatine make a Force user that's more powerful than he is? Just the whole plot makes no sense at face value in the sequels. And in the Acolyte, that's not true. The writing, I would say, is way better than the sequels because the plot makes sense. And so when I'm watching the show, as a Star Wars fan, I kind of enjoy the show just because I enjoy hanging out in the Star Wars universe. Even when you're watching an episode that's kind of mediocre or you're following along a plot that is a little mundane, I still just enjoy being there and hanging out. But I feel like there are plot holes and things that are confusing, weird, or don't make sense that all stem from characters behaving out of character. Because characters will make decisions that seem like they're the types of decisions that character would not make based on what you know about their personality. And it will just be something that will happen in order to get us to the next plot point that they want to happen. And whenever it happens, it's jarring. And I'll give you examples when I go into my synopsis. Second thing is I feel like this show should not have been a show. It probably should have just been a movie, or if they wanted to make it a show, they should have made it a show with longer episodes, and they should have released all the episodes at once, or at least like one episode a day or something. I know nobody does that, but like they shouldn't be releasing them 1 week at a time because it's just annoying. And then the third problem I have, which is connected to the last problem I have, is that I feel like the show, it tries to avoid answering questions, and it creates little mysteries out of things that, like, basically there are plot points in the show that would hit harder and would be stronger if they just relayed them up front, instead of just making them mysterious and then stringing you along for a really long time before they answer the fucking question. It's like they should just give you all the information in the beginning. So those are my three things that I don't like. Characters behaving out of character, the show being a show, and avoiding answering questions for way too long of a time. So basically, I'll tell you what happened in this fucking episode, dude, because it was really dumb. Basically, like, nothing happened in this episode. Like, what happened was we're following along. Oh, Kragen's here. What's up, Kragen? Sorry, I'm not answering chat that much right now for the next 5 minutes because I'm just explaining my opinion about the Acolyte. So it's gonna be like 5 to 10 minutes of me sitting here in the menu before I like read chat and play the game. But anyway, okay, let me do this real quick. Okay, no. So, this episode, basically I told you guys, last episode it was like there was this big fight. That was actually pretty sick. But then the twins switched places, so May, the evil twin, goes back with the Jedi, and Osha, the good twin, goes back with the Sith guy. So, which was really dumb. Again, that is a good example of what I was talking about with my first issue. Characters behaving out of character and making decisions just to progress the plot. They wanted a situation in this episode where the twins were traded places, but so Osha got to spend time with the bad guys, and May got to spend time with the good guys. So what did they do to get us to that plot point? They had May have a conversation with her sister in the last episode that made no fucking sense, and then she knocked her out, and then she traded clothes with her in the middle of the jungle in order for them to switch places. That's just a dumb thing to do. Why would she do that? What would prompt her to do that? What would motivate her to take that action? I don't really know. I can't really answer that question. They just had that happen so they could get us to the situation that we're in this episode where the twins are traded places. So the good one gets to spend some time with the bad guys, and the bad one gets to spend some time with the good guys. So characters behave out of character just to make things happen in the plot in a very sloppy way. So like this episode was, first of all, it said it was 38 minutes, man. And I paused it as soon as the credits started, and there were still 7 minutes left in the episode. And the episode begins with a little thing that's like, previously on the Acolyte, and it gives you a little recap, and it shows the title and everything, and it says Star Wars. So if you add all that together, the episode's not even 30 minutes. It's almost as long as a Clone Wars episode. And the Clone Wars episodes, they usually had more happen in their 22 minutes than what happened here. But basically what happened here was Jedi Master Saul, who I still think is he's the only character in this show that I really like. I really like the actor who plays him. I think he's a badass. There's just something cool about Jedi Master Saul. He's the one likable guy in the whole show. He's charismatic, charming, but like, he gets on the ship with May, right? But he thinks it's Osha at first. And as soon as May approaches her, he runs forward and he hugs her. And she's like, taken aback that she's hugging him. And he's like, I almost lost you. Blah, blah, blah. We need to get out of here. But he's trying to send a distress call, a signal to the Jedi Council saying, help me, my whole team has been killed. All the Jedi on my squad have been killed. And it's like, come in, Master Saul, we can't read you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, our communications aren't working properly. And then the ship loses power for a minute or two. And they've established that Osha was like a good mechanic in the first episode. So Jedi Master Saul says, go back to see if you could fix it. And there's this little tracker alien creature that in the last episode, they brought him on the ship so that he could sniff his way through the jungle and find the Wookiee's house in the middle of the jungle, because they're like trying to find that Jedi Wookiee dude. And he is immediately able to tell that this is the wrong twin, because he sniffs the twin and it's the wrong twin. So they're fucking around in the back of the ship. You know, he's like throwing things at her. It's kind of played for laughs. And in the meantime, we switch to the other twin, who's on an unknown planet now. Just in the middle of nowhere. They're on an unknown planet. It kind of reminds me of Ahch-To from The Last Jedi, because like Luke was there on that island. They're like by the shore, and there's like lots of cliffs. It's actually a very cool looking planet. And there are these little creatures that kind of reminded me of the Porgs from The Last Jedi. But I really liked them. They were cool looking creatures. So again, that actually hits back to another thing that I think is good about the show. I really like the way it's directed. I like the camera work. I like the music. I like some of these planets that we go to and the aliens that we see, and the costumes, except I don't like Darth Teeth's helmet. But like, I think I could tell that the budget's there. I've already spoken about this at length. Yeah, Boston said it has the Star Wars feel to it. Exactly. It has the Star Wars feel to it. More than a lot of these other shows and things have. I think The Mandalorian had a good Star Wars feel, but it felt very low budget. At times, it looked like I was watching a fan film. It looked cheap and bad. And I think Andor had just fantastic level production, amazing filmmaking, amazing acting, high budget and everything, but Andor does not feel anything like traditional Star Wars. Andor feels more like House of the Dragon or something like that. It's not trying to feel like normal Star Wars, which is kind of cool. I would have a problem with that if it was a movie, but as a show, it's really cool. This is like one of the only Disney Plus series I feel is well directed and everything, but it has a traditional Star Wars feel. But they go back to this other planet, man, and Osha awakes from unconsciousness. And the Sith guy, he like goes out into this valley, and there's like a pool of water, not a pond, maybe like a hot spring or something. And he takes off his clothes, and he gets in the water. And they do that thing in movies where, he slowly and dramatically takes his robes off. And the girl's watching from a distance. She can see, look at the huge scars that he has on his body. He must have been through so much trauma. And it's like so fucking cliche. And she gets in the water. He gets in the water, then he can tell, I could see that you're watching me. I don't know how I could tell that you're watching me, but I know that you're watching me. Do you mind if I put my clothes back on? And he swims up really slowly. And like anyone who complains from now on in any future thing that they sexualize female characters in this that, no, hell no. I'm gonna point him to this scene because he slowly gets out of the water and we gotta see his abs and his pecs and everything. And it reminds me of Lost. Actually, it reminded me of Lost. You know, Sawyer used to do that thing where like he'd be like swimming in the ocean or whatever, and Kate would be like, Sawyer, I need to talk to you. He'd be like, well, freckles. And he would like slowly get out of the water naked, and he'd be like, see what you like, blah, blah, blah. And he's got that attitude because he's Sawyer, and they'd be like, put your fucking clothes on, Sawyer. It was like that, only it was like, it was played straight. It was very awkward. Like, there's going to be a lot of people making fun of this scene, I can tell, because it's like the most female gaze, like beefcake like scene. And so immediately they're trying to do this thing where Osha is like attracted to the Sith guy, right? But what does Kragan say? Who had Lost being brought up as a reference for the I did. Anyway. No, okay. But like, I'm trying to do this quickly. So she takes his lightsaber, right, from his pile of clothes. And he's like, you could keep that weapon if you want. Blah, blah, blah. And he walks away. And immediately, this bothers the shit out of me again, dude. Because I'm like, this motherfucker killed all of your friends, people who you used to study at the Jedi Academy with when you were a Jedi, like your fellow pupils. He just like massacred everybody. He tried to kill your sister numerous times. He almost killed you. And then he knocked you out and he brought you unconscious to this random world in the middle of nowhere. You don't even know where you are. This guy is super dangerous. And you were begging Saul in the last episode, don't let me hesitate. If you have a chance to take this guy out, take him out. Blah, blah, blah. Even my sister. I know my sister's dangerous. Well, you have your sister's evil Sith master in front of you, and you have the lightsaber, and you don't kill him. If you're brought to an island with Hitler, even if Hitler shaves off his mustache and you find him really sexy or something because he gets out of... I don't know where this is going. If he gets out of the water, you still kill him. You have the lightsaber and you don't. kill this motherfucker. I'm like Morgan Freeman in Wanted. Shoot this motherfucker. But, like, she doesn't. But she's following him around, and she's like, you killed all of my friends, this and that. And he's like, okay, the ship's over. He talks in, like, this weird voice, too. He's like, the ship's over there. You should start swimming right now if you want to make it by this afternoon. Anyway, are you hungry? You can come with me to my cave. Blah, blah. He's, like, so blasé. And she doesn't kill him, right? But the ship is right there. She could get in the ship and fly away and leave. She doesn't do that. Instead, she just stays on the island with this evil Sith guy who kidnapped her and killed all of her friends, and she's really scared of, and she has his lightsaber. She doesn't do anything. Instead, she just follows him around and pouts. The whole episode, she just follows him around and pouts. Oh, and they referenced that cringe scene too. She's like, what do you want? Why were you training my sister? And he looks at her and he's like, I want the power of 2. And immediately I'm like, the power of 1, the power of 2, the power of many. But basically that's all that was happening this whole episode. Was she was hanging out with him in this cave and having random conversations with him that really irritated me, because the whole time I could not get the thought out of my head that she should just either make the decision to kill him or to leave. And if she's curious and she wants answers from him and she wants to talk to this guy, then it should be one conversation. She should point the lightsaber in his face and say, you're going to answer my questions or I'm going to fucking kill you. You can't hesitate. Just answer my questions, and they should have a really intense conversation. That's what I would do if I was in that situation, and that's what most reasonable people probably would do, I think. But instead, we're cutting between May on the Jedi ship and Osha with the Sith. Why? Probably, I think, because they're going to do the old switcheroo, where, like, the May character realizes, oh, maybe the Jedi aren't so bad, and then the Osha character realizes, oh, maybe I should be a Sith. And then when they confront each other again at the end of the season, it'll be like, ooh, you're on the dark side now, but I'm on the light side now. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's where this is going. But, I already said Jedi Master Saul, he tries to, like, fucking send a distress signal to the Jedi, and he can't communicate with them. But we go back to Coruscant, and we see the Jedi Master that he's friends with who sent them on this mission, right? And a young Jedi Padawan approaches her and says, oh, we got a signal from Saul. We couldn't tell what he was trying to say, but it sounds like his whole team is dead. And she's like, prepare a rescue party. We'll go there right away. And she rushes to this planet. But in the meantime, because the little sniffer creature tracker guy was able to figure out that May is not Osha, it becomes obvious to Saul. So he shoots her with the stun gun and knocks her out. And then, as soon as he knocks her out, he starts thinking. And then, it was so ridiculous. And then, the communications start working. They get the ship to start working and everything again. And the Jedi Master comes in on the little communications thing. And she's like, Master Saul, do you read me, Master Saul? We're nearby with a rescue party. We're about to come to your last known location. And he goes, and he shuts it off, and then he flies his ship away into hyperspace. And they even show, like, the ship orbiting the planet, it flies away, and then, like, 2 seconds later, the Jedi Council arrives. And that bothers the hell out of me, too, because I'm like, you know, these characters shouldn't be able to cross the entire galaxy in, like, 2 seconds, but that's kind of nitpicking. But, like, in KOTOR 2 and, like, everything else, they would always be like, oh, there's many long hours that we'll spend in hyperspace just sitting here traveling. Maybe go talk to your squad member. And I always kind of liked the idea of, like, a ship in Star Wars being kind of like a ship in real life, like a boat. Like, in order to sail across the ocean, it takes a couple days, or at least, 6-7 hours to travel from one side of the galaxy to the other. Apparently not anymore. But, like, that's nitpicking. But, like, the episode ends with the guy having a conversation with Osha, and he says, why aren't you a Jedi? And she's like, because I failed, blah, 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 because I failed. And she gets angry, and she pulls out a lightsaber, and he's like, do it. Strike me down. And she's like, no, the Jedi don't strike down unarmed prisoners. And she turns off her lightsaber again, and I'm like, dude, come on now, for real? And he even brings up to her, he's like, why do you keep saying that you're a Jedi when you're not? And he, like, walks away, and I'm like, good point. Good point. But then it ends with that conversation, and then she goes back to his little cave with him, and she's like, what's with your helmet? And he's like, oh, it's a special helmet. It's made of cortosis metal that's connected to the same material that kyber crystals come from or something, so it's strong with the Force, and it blocks lightsabers, but when you put it on, you can't see very well or hear very well, but it makes you feel like your Force senses are stronger, or something like that. I can't really remember what he said. And he said, do you want to try it on? And it ends with her trying the helmet on, and it's like, oh, she might be going to the dark side. And then in the meantime, back on the Jedi ship, Jedi Master Saul, May wakes up, and she's locked. She's like in handcuffs and stuff. She's locked down. And Saul says, I've had 12 years to think about how I would explain to you what happened to your family and everything. If I ever got to see you again, what I would say. So, we need to find your sister, and we need to find the Sith guy, and we need to do all these things. But first, you and I need to talk about a lot of things. Dun, dun, dun! And so it's like as soon as it's getting good, credits. And these episodes, I already said they're less than 30 minutes apiece, but they feel like they're like 10 minutes. Like the Clone Wars episodes, I already said were only 22 minutes, but they were so dense, so much would happen in each episode, even the bad ones, that by the time it was over, it would feel like you just got a lot of information. You have a lot to digest. These episodes, they're like 30 minutes apiece, and they feel like they're like 2 seconds, because they always abruptly cut off whenever something interesting is about to happen, and they always feel like nothing really happened in them. So they feel so short. So, that's basically what I was talking about when I say characters behave out of character. Jedi Master Saul has been presented as the most likable character in the show thus far, but he behaves very weirdly in this episode, and it makes me worried and concerned that in the final 2 episodes of this show, they're probably going to ruin his character, because they might reveal that he did something despicable in the past to their stupid little witch coven that ranted the power of 1, power of 2, power of many, and they might villainize him. Because again, like, it's hard for me to lay it out in a more transparent way, but it's like they want to have a situation where May and Saul are in this environment where there's no other distractions and there's no other characters that are going to interrupt them, and they can have a conversation about what happened in the past. So, how do we get to that plot point? We have numerous characters make boneheaded, stupid decisions that it feels like they wouldn't really make. Based on everything we know about who they are and what their personality is like, they're making decisions that are weird and feel unmotivated and unjustified in order to progress us to the next fucking plot point. So, Jedi Master Saul, who's been very likable in the whole show, throughout the whole run so far, like now, in the end of episode 6, out of nowhere, instead of doing the logical and reasonable thing and being like, oh yes, Jedi Masters, you have my location, come rescue me, come help me find the Sith guy. Also, the Sith guy kidnapped Osha. I don't know what nefarious, purposes he has for kidnapping her, but she's in danger. We're running out of time. We need to do something. Here, let's rendezvous at this location. Instead of doing that, he does some dumb shit that makes no sense, where he shuts off the communications, and he goes into hyperspace, and he locks May in the back of the ship, and he starts behaving very villainously. They, shoot him kind of in shadow, so he's walking through the room in shadow, and the music's kind of intense, and he's like, you and I are going to talk about what happened. And it's like suddenly he's behaving out of character. And you're like, huh? But like stuff like that always happens just to progress the next plot point. Osha, why didn't she just kill the Sith guy and get on the ship and leave if she's so afraid of him? Because they want to have the situation where she's kind of seduced by him and she turns to the dark side. So they like rush us to that point without really making a logical explanation for it. And it just makes characters behave out of character. So like the writing isn't just like, it's not all bad like the sequel trilogy. I feel like the sequel trilogy, the writing is just terrible throughout like 90% of all of those movies. Maybe like 70% for The Last Jedi. But like the characters just, you know what it is? It's when they make jarring decisions that catch you by surprise and feel unmotivated in the way that I described. What ends up happening is, as a viewer, you end up feeling like you don't really understand who the characters are or what they're all about. When they just make these really strange choices out of nowhere that feel unjustified to progress us to another plot point, you go, huh, maybe Saul isn't who I thought he was. Maybe he's a bad guy? Huh, maybe this character's doing this weird thing. Why? Maybe they're not who I thought they were. And it makes you second guess yourself, and it makes you feel like you don't actually understand who these people are. And because the story is so small scale, if you're not really that invested in the characters because you're confused by them, frankly, you become kind of numb to like everything that's happening, and you're not that invested in the story. So like, it just bothers me when the characters behave out of character. Master Saul behaves weirdly in this episode, and Osha behaves very weirdly in this episode. Second point I already hit on. I don't think this show should be a show. It should be obvious why now. There's only 30-minute episodes. They always end in annoying cliffhangers. And this show has the least action out of any Star Wars TV show. There was a ton of action in episode 5, and it was all really good action, too. Really good lightsaber fights for the most part. A few silly moments. People didn't like the lightsaber headbutt, but I didn't really mind it. But, like, it's sort of lopsided. You want a little bit of action each episode. You don't want very little to happen until episode 5. Then it's like 30 minutes of fighting, and then another episode where nothing happens. It also makes certain plot points feel kind of rushed because they want them to happen within a certain episode. So they'll have us rush to certain parts of the story at times, and then at other times drag out the story 2 times because they're trying to fit everything into the pacing of a show. If they just had this play out like one long movie, like the fucking Snyder Cut of Justice League, just a 4-hour movie or something, or if they just had this be a little mini-series that played kind of like a movie, but we got all the episodes at once, I think it would probably play a lot better. But certain things are rushed. Certain things become predictable, too, because when the story only moves forward a little bit, and then you have a week to think about everything that happened before the next episode comes out, you're able to guess a lot of plot points and things that are going to happen before they happen, where if you were just along for the ride and you were just immersed in the story and just experiencing it all at once, or at least in bigger chunks, you probably wouldn't have that level of predictability. And you know what else? I think some things that seem like they don't make any sense in the moment when they happen, they do actually make sense. It's just that the explanation doesn't come until the next episode. Like, people are like, oh, what is his helmet block the lightsaber? That's fucking dumb. But then in the next episode, they kind of explain why. If we had just had 5 minutes before, we get that explanation, that'd be better. So there's just a lot of weird pacing issues that would be mitigated if we got all of the episodes at once, or if we just got longer episodes, or if this is just one really long movie or something. Maybe like 4 episodes that are like an hour and 20 minutes each. I don't know. But just this format that they have right now where it's 30 minutes and it's like 1 episode a week is just not... It doesn't benefit the story. And then the third thing I already talked about, I think these cliffhangers that we get at the end of every episode are annoying. And what ends up happening is there are plot points that could be a little more interesting if we just had more information about them conveyed to us up front instead of having us question them and presenting them as a mystery and stringing us along for 4, 5, 6, 7 episodes because they don't want to reveal anything till the end of the show. That's just annoying. They shouldn't have so many mysteries in the show. I don't know why Osha, we still don't know why we don't really know her backstory, right? We know she was recruited to the Jedi when she was a little kid from this witch coven. Then we know at some point, as a young adult, she left the Jedi Order. But it's even more fuzzy now. We don't know if she left because it was her choice. We don't know if the Jedi kind of encouraged her to leave and kicked her out because she failed. We don't know why she's not a Jedi anymore. We don't know how powerful she is with the Force. We don't know any of this shit. And we should. Like, this episode was no action. It was just her. All she did on this episode was hang out on the beach, on these cliffs, with this hunky Sith guy that she likes, apparently. Why didn't they just sit down and, like, why didn't she have a whole conversation where she told him all about her past and everything, and she got emotional, and she opened up to him, and they bonded a little bit? Like, why didn't that happen? Because they want to keep it a mystery. They keep things a mystery for too fucking long, and it's annoying. We don't know about that. We don't know what happened to the Witch Coven at the beginning. We don't know anything about this Sith guy. We don't know anything about him. I have a prediction that we're going to learn that he's just the Sith Master, or he's the Sith Apprentice, and then, like, the twins' mom from the Witch Coven is her master. That's my prediction. But, like, I don't know. It goes back to, like, you're not that invested in the characters when you don't know enough about them. And it makes the world feel way less fleshed out than it does in Andor. Do you remember in Andor when Mon Mothma, of all characters, like a very minor side character, not any of the protagonists, not Andor, the show's called Andor, it's about him, not one of the rebels, Mon Mothma has a whole detailed storyline throughout the first season of the Andor where she's basically embezzling money to fund the Rebel Alliance, but the Imperial Security Bureau, which is kind of like the FBI for the Empire, is like picking up on the fact that her funds are missing, and she knows she's being investigated. So she knows that her taxi driver or her limo driver is a mole that's investigating her for the ISB. So she comes up with this plan to blame the missing money in her bank account on her husband gambling, and she like yells at him for gambling in the back of the limo because she knows that the limo driver will feed that information back to the ISB, and it will give her a little bit of time to cover up her bank records. So then she tries to marry off her daughter to this rich, corrupt banker who will be able to reimburse her for the money that she gave to the Rebel Alliance. I mean, just going into it right now, she's not the main character of the show, but she has so much detail around her little storyline in Andor. The comparison between that and the level of world building and detail and character development we get for anybody in the Acolyte is, like, monstrous. And then, just a few other things. I said good things I wanted to say about the episode is well directed. I could tell the showrunner actually is a fan of Star Wars because she makes references to the EU. She imbues the show with that Star Wars feel that Boston mentioned. She makes it, I don't know. I feel like she respects Star Wars more than like J.J. Abrams did, or Rian Johnson, for example. And I do feel like it was kind of intense. There's a scene where the Jedi go back to the Wookiee Jedi's house, and it shows all the dead bodies that the Sith guy killed, and it zooms in on their faces, and their eyes are still open, and I'm like, oh, it's pretty intense for a Disney show. But there's also a lot of little plot holes, too, if you want to nitpick. Like, for example, the Jedi, in the previous episode, they needed that little tracker sniffer creature guy to, like, find the Jedi Wookiee's house, right? But then in this episode, that one girl is like, let's send a rescue party to find the Jedi Wookiee. Or to find Master Saul. He went to find the Jedi Wookiee. And she just goes through the jungle and finds that dude's house in 2 seconds. How did she find his house? They needed a tracker guy in the last episode, and how come she can't sense Jedi Master Saul, like, nearby? Because they show her ship pull up right next to his ship, like, 2 seconds before it leaves. Don't they have a tracker on the ship? There's, like, so many questions, and if this show was just, like, faster paced and more tightly written, you wouldn't have time to, like, sit there and nitpick all these stupid little things, but you do because there's so many other parts of the show that are so sloppy. So, that's my review. I think this episode was okay. When I see all these YouTube channels and things hating the Acolyte, saying, oh my gosh, it's so woke, they're ruining Star Wars, blah, 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 this is the worst piece of content that they've ever made, I don't agree with that. I think the sequels are way worse than the Acolyte, and I think there are good things about this show that I do like, and I think that this show will play out a little bit better once it's over, and you could just watch the whole thing in one sitting. Instead, there's a lot of little plot points and things that you have time to question when you get it in 30-minute little episodes once a week that aren't even 30 minutes. But I do think that this is one of the worst shows out of all the Disney Plus shows so far, and I think episode 3 and episode 4 were just terrible. Terrible. If I was grading this show just based on those 2 episodes, I would be trashing the hell out of this show, because episode 4 especially was just a mess of awful writing, weird character decisions, rushed plot points, things happening out of nowhere that made no sense, and awkward, cheesy moments. I'm a very forgiving person. People think I'm overcritical, but I'm not. I can forgive like 1 or 2 little things that don't make sense when everything else works. Like, that's why I like Batman vs. Superman, the Ultimate Edition. I could forgive the Save Martha moment and a few other cheesy moments when the whole rest of the plot is very detailed and makes a lot of sense, which it does in that extended version, in my opinion. But, like, there's just too many, especially in episode 3 and 4. Episode 3 and 4 I would give like a 3 out of 10. I thought they sucked, honestly. And those episodes were about on par with, like, The Rise of Skywalker, which I thought was just a disastrously terrible movie. The rest of the show, episodes 1, 2, 5, and now 6, I actually think are okay. They just don't play very well as a show. And they're held back by those 2 episodes that I thought sucked, and by the 3 issues that I mentioned. I think characters behave out of character. I don't think this show plays well as a show at all, and so the pacing is very awkward. And I don't think that they should be stringing us along and keeping things mysterious for the amount of time that they do. There's information about the plot and about these characters and things that they should have just either revealed in the first 2 episodes, or we should have gotten to by now. There's only 2 episodes left, but they try to keep it a mystery and give you little tantalizing bits of information each episode to have you question or guess it until they're going to give you the answers in the final 2 episodes. And it's too long to wait. I don't want to wait 2 months for these basic bitch answers to these fucking questions. I don't know. So, there are some things I like about it, but there's a lot of things I don't like about it. It's not a total loss. I do kind of enjoy watching it sometimes, but I think episodes 3 and 4 are really, really bad. And I think this week's episode was okay, but it was kind of just... I watched it and it was over in the blink of an eye, and I was just like, okay, well, why did that happen? Well, why did that happen? That didn't really make any sense. That's kind of annoying. Blah, 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 blah. So, again, if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan like me, it's good enough to be worth watching. There are things like that animated Star Wars Resistance show or the Star Wars Visions that I don't think are even worth watching because they're so bad. But barely. And if you're not a big Star Wars fan, this is one that you could easily skip. Because it's not even connected to anything else, and it's just not good enough. Like, if you're going to be more critical of it than me, then you're not going to like it at all. There, that's my rant. Sorry it was so long. Now, let's go ahead and play the game a little bit.